Hi everyone, my name is Suranjali Seal and welcome to my channel. If you're somebody like me who loves literature, if you are somebody who is all about literature, then this is the channel for you. In this video today, we are going to discuss the history of English literature with particular reference to the age of Elizabeth. Now, whenever we think of the Elizabethan era, it is an age of immense intellectual and creative activity. It is an age of voyages. It is an age of cultural exchange. It is an age of transition. It is an age of literary genius and artistic expression. Now, when we consider all of these things together, the question that comes in our mind is what fostered this intellectual activity? What is it that made all of these things possible? What are the characteristics that characterizes the age of Elizabeth? What made the literary geniuses of the time produce such works of literature which hold relevance even today? We have all read Shakespeare in our school, in our curriculum, in our colleges and universities. We have continued to go back and read these writers. These writers and their works seem to have stood the tests of time. And this literary genius, this literary output found fruition in the age of Elizabeth. So what was so special? What fostered this literary activity in the age of Elizabeth? Let's tune into the next slide to find out. Now, the first characteristic which we are going to talk about is the comparative political stability and also the religious tolerance. Now, what do we mean by this? Elizabeth I promoted religious tolerance as well as fostered political stability. And why is this important? It's because imagine yourself in a state of turmoil. Imagine that there's a war going on. Imagine that there's a tension that occupies your mind. Imagine there's fear whether tomorrow is going to be a good day or a bad day. So when there's this threatened state of mind, in a threatened state of mind, and when you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, amidst that uncertainty and amidst the fear and distress in the mind, one cannot produce great literature. Because what you need to produce great literature is a calmness of the mind. So when there's a period of instability, especially a political instability, great literature, it hinders the production of great literature and good works of art. So before the accession of Elizabeth I on the throne, we have the 30 Years War. The War of the Roses, which lasted for 30 years. Now, it was a civil war, and there was a considerable amount of turmoil in the society. There was unrest in the society. And now with the accession of Elizabeth I on the throne, there was political harmony. She also recognized that there were conflicting groups, religious groups, the Protestants and the Catholics, who did not see eye to eye on many points, social, religious, and cultural points. So therefore, what she did was she fostered a stability between the two groups. She fostered harmony between the two groups. And for the first time, we saw the Protestants and Catholics occupying important positions in the court of Elizabeth, and they were proving to be trusted advisors to the Queen herself. So now there was a religious tolerance, there was political stability, and therefore there was room for the mind to compose its thought. There was no more restlessness in the minds of the people. Now the people were content. They learned to calm themselves down, and all the thought processes in their mind, they could compose it and then devote it to expression through art and literature. And that is exactly what happened in the age of Elizabeth. In the absence of wars, the mind seemed to settle down, compose itself, and birth creativity and great literature. The second trait or the characteristic which characterizes the Elizabethan age is the social contentment. Now, trade and commerce flourished, industrialization was beginning. England had opened up her borders, and she had defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588, and now she has opened her borders, she has command over the seas, and now she's sailing to distant countries in trade and commerce. Now, this trade and commerce also generated a lot of wealth. She went to these other countries. Even in her own home, she was fostering trade and commerce. A lot of wealth was generated. Also, because trade and commerce was flourishing, it it provided employment opportunities. More and more people were able to get into the trading business. They were able to support themselves and their families, and therefore there was contentment. Unemployment was sort of being tackled with, and employment was generated. So there was comparative social contentment. So, for the first time, some form of welfare was provided to the poor via the parishes. Now, the church, the parishes, you can compare, say, a particular district in today's time. There are particular poor, a number of poor or poor people or humble people who live in that particular district. Now, I, as in charge of the district, will take care of my own poor. In my district, I will take care of my poor and see to it that their welfare is taken care of. In the same way, parishes had their own boundaries. Okay, there were different parishes who took care of their own boundaries, and within those boundaries there were the poor, and the parishes were entrusted, the parishes were given the responsibility that they take care of their own poor, that they provided for the poor in their own boundaries. So because some kind of systematic welfare was given to these poor people, again social contentment was fostered and established. Now we come to the third most interesting and exciting and important characteristic of the age, which is that it was an age of discovery, enthusiasm, and exploration. England defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588. So now, with the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, the English nation had command over the seas. Now, there were many voyages. The English nation took to the seas. England took to the seas and traveled to these distant lands. She went from one part of the world to the other, witnessed the characteristics of the culture. She witnessed the elements of the way of life of the people of these different countries in these different regions of the world. And whatever she witnessed there in these foreign lands, she witnessed and she gathered, she accumulated the knowledge, and then she brought it back home. Now, for example, today I visit a different country. Now, in that country, I witness a particular way of life. I witness their culture, and I am accumulating constantly all the knowledge that I am gathering. Then I come back home and I tell my family who has not visited that country, I tell them stories. I tell them, the culture is like this. They live this kind of way. They eat these kind of foods. They dress in a particular way. And my family who has not visited that country yet is immediately taken up by their imagination. Their imagination is triggered immediately. They immediately imagine how the country must be like. Now, in today's age, of course, we go to the internet and search for the countries, and we search for pictures online or videos online that would acquaint us with the countries abroad. But at that point of time, there was no internet. We have to remember the fact that there was no internet, and there was no way that people could actually firsthand witness the country. Either you go to the country and see it for yourself, or you trust the word of mouth from the sailors and voyagers who returned home after sailing to these distant lands. So now people believed the word of mouth. Now this word of mouth, of course, spread from one person to the other, from heart to heart, from mouth to mouth, from life to life, and immediately the imagination is triggered, and everybody has this a desire to know more. Everybody is triggered by the unknown lands. Everybody has the imagination running wild and free, and we know that imagination is an absolute necessity for a work of literature. Imagination fosters great literature. So therefore, this age is characterized by enthusiasm and exploration, which further fostered great literary output. England takes command of the seas. She opens herself up to the world. She visits distant lands and brings the ideas that she has gathered abroad back home. Scientific discoveries by personalities such as Galileo and Copernicus challenged the existing belief systems and promoted a spirit of questioning and reason. Now, we all are well aware of the fact that there was a particular belief system that operated in the English society before the age of Elizabeth. It was an age or a belief system which bordered around orthodoxy and religion, but now this was being challenged by reason. When Galileo and Copernicus contributed their sets of knowledge of the world, when they with their scientific discoveries, that is the moment when people started questioning that if this is a possibility, then why are we following this? If a distant land is living this kind of way, then why are we living this way? So there was a spirit of questioning. There was this conflict between the religion and reason. There was a conflict between the ideas of established facts and the ideas of possibilities. So what happens is, in this age of scientific discoveries, people started questioning more and more of the existing systems. People wanted to know more. They opened themselves up to the possibilities of the world. The voyages abroad, like the one that Columbus took, served as a testimony to the fact that all was not as concretely definable nor rigid in the world. So voyages, again, like I've mentioned, to distant lands, again led to the accumulation, the gathering of different ideas, the accumulation and assimilating of different ideas, and then the production of great literature. The expression of these ideas found its place in literature as well, an artistic expression. So this is one of the most important characteristics of the Age of Elizabeth. Let's go to the next one. Now, since we have understood that it was an age of exploration and scientific discovery, it is not really surprising, and we can understand now better how the Renaissance and the concept of humanism came to England and flourished there. Now, Renaissance began in Italy, and what does it mean? The Renaissance promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. So, as these voyagers traveled to Italy, and as they witnessed the grandeur of ancient Rome and the Roman and Greek culture, philosophy, literature, and art, they were inspired by it. They were fascinated by it, and they brought these elements and ideas of the Renaissance back home. As they traveled back, they came back with these ideas, and the Renaissance began in England. So the ideas of the Renaissance were brought to England during the Age of Elizabeth, and therefore, hence, the Age of Elizabeth is also sometimes called the Age of Renaissance in the history of English literature. It is because during the reign of Elizabeth I, these ideas were brought from Italy to England. Now, humanism. What does humanism mean? Humanism is a rationalist system of thought with emphasis on man rather than the supernatural. Now, because, like I've already talked about, the belief system, the medieval scholasticism, which actually the belief system which which was prevalent in England at the time was being challenged by reason. So therefore humanism took birth. What is humanism? They focused on man rather than the supernatural. They wanted to decipher what mankind and life is all about, what the world is all about, and therefore humanism also began at that point of time. So therefore the Renaissance in humanism, it is all but natural that they took place at a time like that, because it was a time when the world was opening itself up to each other. Okay, and lastly, I would also want to talk about cultural diffusion. This is also a concept. Cultural diffusion would mean a particular idea takes birth in a particular place. Say the Renaissance began in Italy, but then it gradually spread to different parts of the country, different parts of the world. So the idea which begins in a particular place and then spreads out and diffuses to different parts of the country, that is known as cultural diffusion, and this is exactly what happened in the Age of Elizabeth. Therefore, to sum up everything that we have studied and understood regarding the characteristics of the Age of Elizabeth, I would like to sum up the characteristics as follows: comparative social and political and religious stability, social contentment, age of discovery, enthusiasm and exploration, the Renaissance and humanism, and cultural diffusion. Now, I hope this video has been helpful for you, and if it has, then kindly like the video and do subscribe to my channel for similar content. And till then, love all things literature, and more power to you. Thank you.